Alright, hi, hello. Today we will hopefully be making a jack-o'-lantern sweater. We'll be seeing if we can achieve it because I'm not going to use a pattern. I'm just going to kind of make it up as I go along. So we'll see how it goes. As you can see, I love Halloween and I really wanted to make some Halloween sweaters, but crochet is a very expensive hobby as well as a very time-consuming one. But I said I can at least make this. So to start, you'll need a crochet hook, you'll need some yarn. I am using the Impeccable Loops and Thread yarn. I really loved this like orangey, it's almost like a burnt orange color. They called it baked clay, which I feel like is also an appropriate name for it. This is from Michaels. This is $4.99 yarn, which I love. I bought it when it was buy one get one 50% off. So for the 4 skeins of burnt clay, it was only $15, plus I of course got black. I got this in the Red Heart Super Saver, so this one you actually get a lot more yarn, I believe. So I won't obviously be using all the black, but I'll have more for future projects, which is great. So all in, I spent less than 20, or actually 20 bucks on yarn, because I think this was $5 as well. And I think I will be able to only use these 4 skeins of 285 yards to make it. Fingers crossed. We might be a little short. We're gonna find out because I actually don't know, since I'm just going off of my own mind. So anyways, if you're like a small medium, that's kind of what sizing you're gonna use. 4 to 5 skeins of yarn may be enough. We shall see here. Obviously, if you're larger than that, smaller than that, you'll have to adjust the amount of yarn you have. Next, you'll also need a crochet needle, very important part. You'll also need a sweater or a sweatshirt that is not as loose and boxy as you would like for yours to be. So for me, I got like a slightly boxy sweater to use as my template. So that's definitely important. And I think that's it. So, also you will need a piece of paper if you're like me and like to lay everything out. Now, to preface, I did already start the back. This is from 1 skein of yarn, plus I still have extra, which makes me very hopeful that we can only use 4 skeins of yarn to make this a sweater. I'm making mine cropped, so that will also affect how many skeins of yarn you use. If you're not making yours cropped, I like to do crop sweaters because it saves on yarn. Now I made the back first, which I recommend for you guys to do as well if you are not using a pattern, because this way you kind of have a layout of how your front's gonna look, so you can figure out placement wise of how you want to do your jack-o'-lantern. So basically what I'm gonna do, I have to go get a piece of paper. I did forget that part, but I can lay out my back here, and then oops, I can use the back to kind of lay out where I want to put each eye, the nose, and the mouth. So that is definitely what I recommend for the start of this. We're gonna go ahead and get started with not this, but the paper. All right, so I drew out just a basic face on my crochet, like the back here, to kind of get an idea, and I'm kind of realizing that I want it to be bigger. I think this is about what I kind of want it to look like, but I think what I'm gonna do instead is I'm gonna kind of draw out lines just to get an idea, and then have like the eyes up a little higher, and then I'll just know where to finish the mouth. So I'll show you what I mean. But if you want like a smaller face, that would work out perfectly. But if you're like me and want the face to take up a little bit more room, let's jump into what I'll. So this is definitely a lot closer to what I want. So basically I'll have the mouth go down a little bit further than on my picture. and then the eyes and nose are a lot better. So what my steps will be for this, I know you're probably like, the paper's pointless because it doesn't exactly line up with where you start. So because I have the starting piece and this, first I'm gonna measure everything out to make sure we have like even lines and everything for my little doodle here. And then I'm basically just gonna kind of like secure it onto this so I can visually see as I create my front panel of where I'll want to start. So with this smile, I'll probably want to start across this line or maybe even this chain right here. So I'll know once I get there on my front panel where to officially start. So that's kind of my thought process behind it. It may not work for everybody and everyone may think I'm crazy for doing it this way, but this is what's gonna work for me. All right, so I'm set up to start the front panel since I gave a little bit of back information. So this is technically if whether you're doing the back panel to kind of be able to place everything, if you want a little, I guess, guide of how I did that. So we got our yarn, we got our crochet hook. I am using a new skein of yarn for this just for the ease of not having to tie my yarn together. So then do my starting chain, just like you should. I always try and consciously keep to myself that you don't want to do the starting chain too tight. I feel like that is always one of my personal flaws, is doing it too tight. And we have out the sweater I am basing it on. So I am basically going to do my starting chain from about right here all the way to the other seam. I'm going to be about a fingertip short of it. This should make it nice and a little bit bigger than this. As I said before, I got a sweater that's smaller fit-wise than what I want, and basically going to use this as a base, so I know that it's bigger than that. Since this yarn stretches as you use it, I think that stretched about 3 inches. I wouldn't, if I was trying to make it this size, I wouldn't want to do my starting chain all the way to the end. I would want to stop it a little bit short. But also, since you have to account for like your seam and everything, you definitely want to make it a little extra long. So I'm going to do my starting chain and we'll come back. All right, so I've crocheted all the way from seam to seam, or well, did a starting chain from the seam to seam. Now I'm going to set my phone down, get a kind of funky angle, sorry about that. And I'm going to do my first row. So I'm not going to go into this very first chain right here because that's where your loop comes from. And at least for me, I find it very difficult to go into that one. I find that sometimes it messes with the crochet a little too much. And I'm going to do the half double stitch, which has been the one that I have just really attached myself to for whatever reason. If you're not familiar, there's going to be about a 1,000 probably better tutorials than this one, but you just loop over, push through, pull, loop and pull through all of them. I don't know why. This one is just the one that has really stuck with me. I find it to be, I guess, the one that I can just really like zone out and do. So I'm going to go all the way through each and every single loop here, whatever the proper name is. I don't know proper names of stuff. I feel like that's something I should explain right now. Is my crochet is all self-taught. I kind of just sporadically watch like videos on how to do different stitches and stuff, and everything else I've just kind of I kind of winged it, whatever the proper way to say that is. I don't really care for counting with patterns because, kind of like I was talking about with the half double, and why I like it so much is For me, crochet is best when I get to just sit there and kind of zone out and take 5-10 minutes to just let my mind rest, not really think about anything, not overthink about anything. To me, it's great for anxiety because you just get to use your hands and create something without having to sit there and overthink. Now doing this jack-o'-lantern print is definitely going to be taking that ability away from me, but at least the start I get to kind of zone out and do. So I'm gonna finish this off and then we'll come back with where to go next. All right, so I've completed my first chain or row, whatever you want to call it. I'm holding it. So I am going to go all the way into the very first starting chain. Try not to pull on this because it will close it off, to try and make a nice straight line. And then when I go on to my second, third, fourth, whatever, up until I start dropping stitches to make the sleeves, I am going to go into this very first, so there's technically this one over here, but that's once again where your yarn's coming from. So we're gonna go in that very first one and pull through and then keep going. And we're gonna do like the same on the end, and that's how you kind of get that nice flat as you can get edges with your yarn, because honestly, crochet, you don't really get the as flat edges, especially when you use thicker or like chunkier yarn. I'm sure there are some perfectionists and like really talented people, or people who have been doing it for a long time, who definitely get that super flat edge. But for me, I'm like, as long as it's, you know, working towards a nice flat edge, not rounded, not chunky, not wavy, then it's good to go. So I'm gonna go through and do a few rows here off camera so we can progress this video some. Okay, so I'm about to where I want to start adding black yarn in. So I'm on about 7 rows in, and I'm going to kind of use this because I don't have any stitch markers to kind of place on here about where I want to start adding the black. So I'm gonna continue with my row until I get here, and then I'll check back and show you guys how I'm gonna add the black, and then how I'm gonna make it even across here without counting and without the added difficulty of trying to count now when you're this far in. All right, so I have one more loop before I want to add the black, and I'm only gonna do the 3 right there, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a starting right there for the black, then pull the black through. Gonna want to make sure we keep everything else tight here. And why we did that is because this top loop is always going to be folded over on the next, and since I want black over here, it's going to take a couple of rows to sort that out there. Then I'm just going to go through, gonna start adding my black right through here. Now if you want to be a perfectionist with it, I would recommend really planning out your stitches here, because if you see the top loop from the previous row, if you do all of those black, you'll definitely have a much flatter look to it. So there's that. We got that started. We're gonna tighten that a little bit so it's all nice and flat. And then to figure out where to end on the other side, we're gonna put this flat. I'm gonna move this for a second. Then I'm just gonna hook through to the other side. So now I have my next marker right here, so I can make a nice even pattern. So I'm gonna go through all the way with my black till I get to this spot. Oh, also, I was waiting till I kind of looked at it with all the black if I wanted to add a tooth. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a tooth on the bottom. Don't wanna do that. Get in the zone. All right, so we're gonna do that. And then to add a tooth here on the bottom, we're gonna switch back to our orange yarn. I don't know if this is technically the proper way to do it, y'all, but this is how I do this. And I tend to not have too many issues with it, as long as you don't pull your yarn too tight. I think I'm gonna make the tooth about 3, should I do 3 or 4 here? I think we'll make this one 3, and then we're gonna switch back to black. So drop that, do this, and then switch back to the black here. We're gonna go all the way through now to the end, and we have the start of our tooth. Oop, don't mix the yarn. And then we have a start of a tooth there, as well as the start of the mouth. All right, so you'll have to ignore the yarn behind me here. So we're to the end here. So this will be our last black, and then we're gonna switch back to the orange. Oops, if it wants to come all the way through there. And then continue going through all the way to the end, and then we'll come back up to start the black again. All right, so we are now going back the opposite way, which does add a little bit of difficulty. So typically your yarn wants to go to the back of the hook, so basically the opposite side you're working on. So you'll want to keep in mind when you're switching colors that like this is how I do it. I'm sure there's way better ways to do it, but tuck your yarn back and jump right on into the next one. This one for some reason is really tight there. All right, so jump in to the next one and keep going. That way, because if you don't tuck this, it'll stick out the front right here, and then it will create a line across your opposite color here. So we're gonna go into it and get to the orange, and we're gonna pull this to the back and pull this up front. You also get to see all the extra yarn around. I'm sure there's people who end their yarn instead of like what I'm doing where I'm keeping it all connected. That would definitely make a much prettier inside. But honestly, if you're just starting out with switching like colors and stuff, I highly recommend doing it this way, because then there's a lot less tie-in at the end. It's not going to be as comfortable, and I might end up considering looking into how to add a patch to this if it's uncomfortable in any way. But yeah, so even though it looks bad in the back, we are starting to get the face of our jack-o'-lantern. So I'm going to go all the way back through this side, and I'm going to keep slightly widening the sides to kind of make a curved look here. So instead of stopping like right on this, I'm going to add it a little bit further and keep doing that until I get up to the point where I want to kind of flatten it off. All right, so I'm about where I want to add my second tooth. You can add as many jack-o'-lantern teeth as you want. I'm just gonna do 2. So I'm gonna do another 3 here, good enough yarn. Switch back to black. Now I'm gonna talk about a couple of things here. Let me just finish off this so it's nice and easy. First thing is something I hinted on before, how you could leave this. Something else you can do, which we'll be doing once we're all done with this, which will also correct a slight issue in the front, is what we're gonna do after the sweater's completely finished, or at least this panel, is we're gonna snip this, finish them off where they're not gonna fall through the other side or anything or unravel. So we're gonna snip all these extra spots and then we're gonna weave them in. So why we're gonna do that instead of just leaving them, or like I said, you can totally leave them, it's up to you, is because like here, it kind of has these jagged edges just because of, unfortunately, I should have not done these 2 spots, but when crocheting, they didn't look like that until I got to the next row. So a great way to fix this is with the extra yarn and stuff. So once we're all finished, I can fix that. I can fix this little uneven line, or like this tooth, we can weave in some of the yarn to kind of smooth out that as well, and smooth out down here. Just a few different things. Or like I had brought up earlier, you can kind of figure out a way to patch, add a piece of fabric so this doesn't rub or pull, but we're definitely going to be snipping this at the end. So if you're looking at this and wondering what we're going to do, I just wanted to go ahead and address that. But also another thing is if you want to try and create the jack-o'-lantern I'm making, so this tooth is 3 rows up and then I have 2 rows of just black across. So I'm going to do 3 rows with this tooth as well, and then I'm going to be done with the black for now until we get to the nose. All right, so the mouth is done, and I've gone up about 4 rows here to get to the row that I'm going to start the nose on. And I'm going to do something similar to what I did last time with, well, it would help if I could find my needle. All right, so I found it. So we're going to do similar to what we did with the mouth, where we're going to fold our crochet in half. And I only want to do 1, 2, 3 over. And I'm actually going to count this time because that will help. I actually don't think that will be large enough. I think we're going to go. So this is our center point right here. So I'm going to go over 2 more. And let's see, how much would that be from here to here? Is that too big? That's too big. All right, let me fold it over again. Make sure I don't lose my center point. And do this too. So that's perfect. I'm gonna hold that spot so I know where to add the black again for the nose. All right, so like I did before, I'm gonna find my black all the way down here. I'm gonna keep this nice and tight, and I'm gonna start on this. So I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See, is that enough? I don't think that would be centered here. All right, so I have to do 2 more. Let me see if that's too much though. That's too big of a nose, because I want to do a smaller nose, but let's see. how this looks. All right, so I did 7. Honestly, I think that looks pretty good because we're gonna shrink it into a little triangle here. So I'm gonna switch back to orange. So gonna back pedal a little bit here, pull that through, find my current orange yarn, and then proceed on. And then once we get up to the next row, I'm going to shrink the size to make a triangle shape. So I realized I was out of frame for that. So to get the triangle shape, the last stitch over the orange, I'm just gonna have the top loop orange, then the rest black, and then go through. That is too many on there. And then go through to here. And so now we're going to finish off like this, but instead we're gonna pull through orange and pull orange the rest of the way through. Just like that. And with these kind of like more open spots right here, you can definitely pull those shut elsewhere. But you're gonna get a little bit more of a triangle shape. If you really want to get, which I'll probably go back here and do, is this stitch right here. It's a top one. I'll probably switch over to orange to really get a little bit more of a triangle shape in. But if not, this is fine too, because like I said, when you work back all this yarn, once we trim it and reel it in, you can kind of create more of a triangle shape as well. All right, so for the eyes, I'm gonna kind of line up with the mouth here. The only thing is, as you can see, even though this is centered, this kind of went off to the side. But I'm okay with that, it being a little uneven, because let's be honest, jack-o'-lanterns shouldn't be perfectly even in general. So I'm gonna kind of line the eyes up with these, and this is gonna be one of the few times I actually count to make the eyes even, just like I did with the nose. Okay, so I have completed the actual jack-o'-lantern face side. It's not perfect, the nose isn't perfect. I definitely have like this orange spot, these 2 orange spots right here that could have reworked, but I'll probably go back through, like I said, when I fix this up and weave it in and try and fix that. But this is how much yarn I have left from my skein. Probably, I don't know, that might even be like 1/3 of the yarn left, which is great for only using 4 skeins of this. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it's gonna work out. But I'm done with this, so I'm gonna work on the 2 sleeves first, and then we're gonna do the hem. Ignore my dirty table, my son plays on this table, and the neckline. Okay, so I am gonna pull out one of my other skeins of yarn just to kind of get an idea of how much yarn I'm gonna use for each sleeve. So since I use this sweater as my guide for the body, I'm also gonna use it as a guide, especially for when it comes to up here on how to do the sleeves. That's kind of why I picked a sweater. But yeah, so I don't know how most people do their sleeves, because like I said, I'm not a tutorial or patterns person. I just kind of go roll with the punches when it comes to crochet. I do my sleeves just like you see sleeves from a store, where it's one solid piece stitched together in the middle. That's how we're rolling here today. It's just like that. So I'm gonna do my starting chain here. Let me get centered. Just gonna do a nice loose starting chain. And I'm not gonna necessarily measure off of this sweater, because I do want my sleeves to be a little bit bigger. Like I said, the sweater's more a guide, so you kind of can find the correct direction to move everything and just follow along the seam, because you can still line your seams up with the sweater, even if you have something larger. That's at least my personal thought process. I'm sure there's people with a lot less chaotic thought processes who think that it's insane, but this is how my mind works, so we're rolling with it. So we're gonna do our starting chain here, and once it gets about big enough for where I'm gonna put it. Now, typically you have a cuff, which we are going to be making, and I'm going to start a little high on my arm when it comes to my like where I'm measuring for, because of how low I dropped this to. There's definitely potential that it's gonna cause my sleeve to be much longer than intended. And since we are making cuffs, if you accidentally make your sleeve too long and then try and add cuffs, it's just gonna be a super long sleeve. But if you put it where I'm gonna probably do it about right here, so like where I still have plenty of room, probably about just less than halfway up my forearm here. And I want it to be a little loose through here, so I am gonna measure. I think that's a little bit big, so I might drop a couple of those stitches, because that's about how big I want it in general, and it will stretch as I use it. So let me drop. I'm gonna go to 3 here, and that's like perfect right there, exactly where I was planning to do it. But if I put it up about partway up my arm here, that gives room for if I accidentally make the sleeves too long, it gives room for them to move their way down, and I can still add a small cuff on the end without making them too long with the cuff. Or if it ends up being still a little short where maybe it only comes down to here, I can just add a thicker cuff. I feel like that definitely gives you a lot more wiggle room. So I'm gonna get started and get this going. You want to start out a little slow, because as you can see, this does, if we look at the sweatshirt, it gradually widens a little bit to make more room for the upper arm, which is for most people bigger than their forearm. Mine definitely is, which I'm gonna do the same as I do this. I'll probably do 2 rows of this length and then slowly add stitches to make it wider. And definitely once you get up to this point, you're gonna kind of go at a more triangle direction, which we'll get to. All right, so after so much time, I'm finally done with my first sleeve. I feel like this sleeve probably took almost as much time as like 1.5 of the front panel. This is how much yarn I have left. It definitely used more yarn as well than these did. Of course it took more than this since I have black, but yeah, this was a tedious task to do the sleeve. So it doesn't have a cuff on the end. I have to do that as well, but I am gonna lay this out and I'm gonna measure out to make my second sleeve. Now, with that being said, I think we may still be on track for only needing 4 skeins of this orange yarn and then only some of that black. But we shall see. Definitely, if you're, so for me, my vision is going to be that this will be orange, the cuffs will be orange, and the hem of the sweater will be orange. But if you end up running out of yarn, you can use the rest of the black to make the like cuffs of your sleeve or anything like that. And by the way, my sleeve is a puff sleeve or like a wide sleeve. I like my sleeves a little looser, so you probably won't use as much yarn as me if you are my size and don't do kind of like that wider sleeve look. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and lay this flat and get started on my second sleeve, because it'll probably take another 2 days just during my spare time to make it. So I have both my sleeves done. I have my front panel, my back panel, all done. So now there's several ways I guess you could go about it, where you can make like the neckline, the waistband, and the cuffs for the sleeves, but I'm actually gonna go ahead and weave all 4 of these pieces together and make the sweater, and then I'm gonna basically see if I need to, how much length I want to add, if I want to just do like a short little hem, or if I want to do something thicker to add some length. I think that will be the best way to go with just kind of making it without a pattern. I don't know how long it's gonna be. Alright, so I stitched up the sides of the sweater, and I'm gonna do the sleeves now, and I'm gonna use a safety pin. If you have a stitch marker, that works as well, to kind of like mark off where it's gonna go into the body of the sweater. Okay, so we technically have a sweater. Mine definitely needs a little touching up. First off, I have a square neckline, so when I was about up to like also you'll see I have to touch up my sleeves here, but once I was like up to this point while making my sleeves, I realized that I was going to end up with a square neckline. So what I'm personally going to do is I'm going to go in and crochet from here to here and go all the way up to probably about here, because I think I'm going to do a wide neck on this sweater, and then I also am going to pinch my sleeves in here, because I was trying to make a puff sleeve and they ended up getting like where they have this little bit of a point there. So I am going to point that in, and my sweater is a little shorter than I typically like, so probably gonna do about a 1.5 to 2 inch band. And obviously my sleeves are pretty short. I was really nervous that they were gonna end up being too long. So I'm kind of glad that they're short, because I actually might have them be just naturally a little shorter, or I might do like a thin fitted cuff. So we're not done yet. Technically, yes, this is a sweater. It's ready to go. I could potentially tie up all the ends and wear this out, but this is, like I was saying, this is going to be my plan. I'm going to pinch the sleeves here by going on the inside and sewing the seam a little tighter on both ends. I'm going to come in to the top here on the front and the back, because the back is also squared off. I'm going to come in and I'm going to go from here all the way across, and I'm going to have it tighter where you know, I can then add a wide neck collar. I'm gonna add my hem to it and add about 1.5 inches for my personal liking of length, and then I'm gonna add little sleeve cuffs. So while we're a good chunk of the way done, we're definitely not finished yet, but I'm pretty proud of it. I think this will be done by tomorrow, hopefully. All right, so as you can see, this was my original finish right here, and I've added on, and it's still slightly squared off just because when I was making my sleeves, I was about to this point on the sleeve when I realized it was going to be squared at the top. And I said, you know what, I put a lot of work into this, I'm just going to have a slightly squared neck. It's not a big deal. I think a lot of people, when they're not making for themselves, have to go back and fix it, but since I'm making it for myself, when I add the collar, it's gonna look even better, but it already looks better, especially on. Now I'm working on the cuffs. So basically I'm doing like a ribbed pattern here. So as you can slightly see, it's gonna be better once we get through. So for here, I am only going in, so you go into like the backs only and then the fronts only, and you reverse every two rows. So I did misspeak in my last clip there. So the first one, after the first row after the chain, you just do a regular one. Then every row after, you go into the back loop. So here, flip around. You're always gonna wanna go into the back loop of the chain to get a ribbed look. I'm doing every other. Since these are going to be smaller and cuffs, I'm going to do that also for the neckline. But for the hem, I am going to do every 2 rows, switching back and forth. All right, so I completed cuff 1, and like I corrected, this is my starting chain, so you can see my starting chain. Well, this is my starting chain. I did the simple like standard, and then I kept going into the back loops of each. So for example, if I was going this direction, I would only go into the back loop to create this ribbed look. I made it to the size where I'll just attach straight onto the end. Now I'm going to make the second one the same size as this. So all right, so I finished my 2 sleeve cuffs, and I'm on to my neckline. So I'm doing the same thing again, where I do my starting chain, do a normal first chain, then enter in the back loop of the top only. And I'm doing this one a little thick because I am going to try and round out my neckline. It's still going to be a wide neckline, but I am going to try and round it out when doing this by having a thicker one where it just kind of smooths out these little spots on the front and back of here that will make it a little nicer and smoother. All right, my sweater's upside down, but you get the gist of what I'm showing. I finished the collar and the cuffs, as I just said before. I feel like once you get these done and once they're attached, it really takes your sweater from I clearly made this at home to something that looks a little nicer. I feel like this just really elevates the look of it, even though I haven't attached it yet, as you can see. I'm gonna go ahead and do the hem of the sweater. I'm not showing you because all my son's art stuff is over there. But I'm gonna go ahead and do the hem stuff, and then I will come back and attach it all. All right, the second most exciting part of doing a sweater is when all the pieces are done. So this part is finally done. It took a little bit longer than I would have liked, but I love doing this like ribbing because it's just very satisfying, especially when it's short. But I have all my pieces. I have my neckline, I have my cuffs, and now I just have to do the very tedious part of attaching all of them. which is definitely not my favorite. I think my least favorite though, if I'm going to be completely honest, of everything is weaving in ends, but this is definitely a close second. It's attaching everything. So I'm going to do that quickly and then we'll do a full reveal of the sweater. I have the cuffs stitched on. I wanted to share how I am stitching on the neckline because since it was squared off, if you ended up like me where you had it slightly squared off, I am pinning it every little bit to try and level this out so I can have a nice rounded neckline instead and it not be too awkward. And ta-da! It is done. I'm so excited about it and I'm actually really thrilled. It does still kind of like pinch a little weird when I bend my arms, but that's okay. It's this sleeve for some reason, even though they're the same exact sleeve. But wow, this is my first completed sweater, you guys, if you couldn't tell by my process of everything. This is my first finished sweater. I'm incredibly proud of it. The cuffs are the perfect length. The hem is the perfect length, and I have a rounded neckline now without anything. I am still gonna pinch in this sleeve, I guess, because I did wait. If you had an issue like me, because as you can see, this side's not a problem. Once I add the cuffs, it actually evened out this side. It's just this sleeve that needs a little pinching, but this is the finished product. I'm really proud of it. I actually really love this and I can't wait to wear it. I was really worried it was gonna feel a little too heavy, but it's actually quite warm and not heavy at all. And I think it looks really good. So I'm very curious if anyone was able to follow how I did it, if you personally made this sweater or if you have made a pumpkin / jack-o'-lantern sweater in the past, to let me know down below, or if you just love Halloween and have other Halloween sweaters you have crocheted, I would love to know as well, because I think I will only have time to do one more. I've already picked out which sweater I'm gonna do. I will be doing a video to share with you guys. I do have a couple other Halloween things I will be doing as well. I love Halloween, it's my favorite season. If I had more time and endless amounts of money, I would be making a ton. But this is a great start and I'm really excited about it. So yeah, here is like a little more up close to everything. I just like, I can't even believe I made this. Does anyone else have those moments if you're like a crocheter or knitter where you're like, I made this sweater? That's what moment I'm having right now, because like I said, I have 2 sweaters that I've started forever ago and I've just never completed. So the fact that I did this, I'm very proud of. Took me about a week. I didn't crochet for like super long periods of time. I think the most time I would have at once would be about like 30-45 minutes to sit down and crochet. So if you have more time, if you have like a day or two to be able to sit down and crochet, I definitely think this is possible. The sleeves are tedious, the like hems are tedious, but I think it's totally worth it after everything. But yeah, I hope this video turns out somewhat okay. If you have any polite criticisms, feel free to let me know in the comments. I am still learning how to do all this and it's going to be a work in progress. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.